Elis, nice to meet you, man.
What's up?
Good morning on a Thursday here at this songwriter retreat.
Yeah, man.
How's the week gone?
It's going pretty good. Yeah, a lot of sessions. There's a lot of cool artists here. A lot of cool artists. I've really liked meeting everybody. Everyone here has been. I feel like when you get when you're in Nashville, people can be very very businessy.
Okay.
So it's been really refreshing to work with a bunch of people that are like very, they want to collab, they want to work. So
okay. So this thing's called the Ari Retreat. How'd you get involved?
So I actually found Matt on Instagram.
Okay.
And I reached out to him trying to find. He was talking about another retreat that he was doing before this, and I was like, "Hey, can I sit in and watch?" type thing. He was like, "We actually have another one, so if you want to come out, here you go." And so he slid me some stuff, and here we are now.
Okay. How's the week gone?
Awesome. I've had only a couple sessions. I haven't really got to make a lot, but sitting in and watching people develop their craft and their projects it's been absolutely amazing. I'm so happy to see this side of everything because it's a lot of creative people, and yeah, it's really cool, really cool.
Well, so what's interesting for me is everyone has an intention here. And yes, it's the collaboration, the community, the networking, which is all amazing. I guess what's fascinating to me, to be honest, is like there's an intention on the syncing aspect and like getting placement and all those things, and that's cool because I'm all for musicians to make money in whatever way they can because there's value there. But what's interesting is just. It's like, okay, is it about that or is it about the art,
So I don't know if you've been around for a lot of the sessions or just a few of them, but I've seen actually what people will do is they'll start kind of in their own direction with the track, and then it just happens that it's like, wow, I can hear this being kind of synchy. And then they like work the details into sync, and then it just ends up being something that's like, okay, this works with sync, know? I think people are focusing very artistry and then taking it that direction, which is really cool. Really cool.
It's the byproduct of the core. Okay.
Yeah. I think people are just looking for a chance to work together, and
all right.
Yeah.
Has there been a moment that will stick with you, a month from now or 6 months from now about the last few days?
I've got to say, I went off to another studio with Teddy, and that was one of like my favorite experiences so far, probably in all of production, just seeing how they worked. And because I'm a producer too, so typically I'm sat on the backside of, producing, and I don't really get the whole artistry aspect a lot of the time being in my own studio, but being able to sit back and be in like the artist standpoint and, put input, but not be the one doing everything. It's a totally different feeling, and definitely something I want to be involved with more. And that was kind of my goal when I came here, was to find producers that I can do that with, because I love producing. Like, I've been doing it for 10 years, so I love it, but I also want that artistry side of things less in the production. When I came this week, I wanted to focus in on that artistry, and so I feel like I've gotten the opportunity to, and so it feels amazing to have that.
So we're going to get to your art momentarily, but you were born and raised here in Tennessee, right?
Yes.
All right, tell me about that.
It's Nashville.
Yeah. What's it like growing up here?
So I lived just outside of Nashville growing up, so I didn't have like the busy, streets and all that stuff. Like, everything wasn't as compact, but I've seen it grow.
Yeah, it's grown a lot.
I remember driving up on Nashville when I was a kid, and you got to see like the beautiful, like, just Nashville as you drove up, and it was so freaking pretty. And now there's like bridges and stuff in the way because of just building and like you can't see anything.
Yeah.
But that being said, I'm more north now.
Okay.
And so I get to see it from like coming that way, and there's not as much construction covering it up, and it's still so pretty coming down.
Was it always just a thing for you to grow up here that you're like, okay, I have to do music? Or would this have happened if you were in Iowa?
I feel like this probably would have happened if I was in Iowa.
Okay.
When I started music, it actually ended up, I was listening to a song, and it just was like I want to produce. Like, and then, so I sat down and then I pulled up a video editor for the first time I ever tried producing.
Yeah.
And I just threw in stuff that I found online and in a video editor and was just trying to make music in that.
Oh my gosh.
Because I didn't know anything about a DAW, nothing about that. This was
Yeah.
just, I want to make music and I'm going to figure it out. So started on that, and then about a year later, I want to say, maybe 2, I found Ableton because my parents had bought me one of those like little keyboards, you know. I feel like a lot of people have that as like their first gift,
Okay.
you know. And it came with like the free thing for Ableton. And so I started producing on Ableton because I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And then it just took off from there,
Yeah.
and I just kept going. And I did videography as well at the time because
Okay.
I did like YouTube and live streaming.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so it just kind of flowed into the music itself,
Yeah.
and it all just kind of came together. It wasn't really, like my family is in the music scene, but I wasn't really aware of it as a kid, you know, like how serious the music scene was for my family. I just knew that they were in music.
Okay.
And
Was that your parents or?
no, it's my grandfather,
Your grandfather.
and I guess my dad's side, you could say.
Okay.
Winter's Brothers Band.
Okay.
Yeah, Don. He's
Don Winters.
Yes.
Okay.
Don Winters.
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
amazing.
He was actually the yodeling king at one point. He had the
Yes.
world record for like, I think the longest holding a note or something like that.
Gosh, that's amazing.
It was like, yeah, back probably early 2000s or yeah.
You got to bring that back.
Yeah, right.
Have you ever thought about what you'd be doing if it wasn't music?
Yes. So if I didn't continue with the music stuff, it probably would have been something in videography or something of that realm.
Yeah.
As I said, I did video editing at about the same time. I started like a year earlier on video editing and such. So it probably would have been something in that direction.
Okay.
If not, just something creative.
Something
I've
creative,
always
yeah.
wanted to own my own business.
Okay.
And it just happened that I was creative as well. And so I was like, wow, let's, put these two together. And now we're
Yeah.
going somewhere that is like more a career.
Okay.
You know?
So you are an artist, and on your Instagram, I've never heard of this description. So you're self-described Alt-Pop Upbeat Sad Boy.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of everything there. I guess what the hell is that?
So alt-pop is just the genre,
Okay.
alternative pop. That's, pretty straightforward. Typically when you hear sad boy, you think like, oh, really like low,
Yeah.
laid back, like
Yeah.
just really sad lyrics, So I didn't want that to be what people thought of when they
Okay.
saw sad boy, because it is some sad lyrics. But it's got a lot more upbeat tone to it. So it's alt-pop, it's like upbeat alt-pop with like sad lyrics drawn
Okay.
to it.
Why so many sad lyrics?
Just that's where I find the most comfort in writing.
Okay.
More recently, it's been more happy and it's been more uplifting.
Okay.
But I feel like when heavy things happen, and a lot of artists' life, they tend to draw towards music
Yeah.
to like outlet,
Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like that's what it is for me. A lot of the time, it ends up being an outlet when I sit down to write. So
Okay.
it just happens to be that direction. It also, from what I do now going into the future kind of sets that transition
Okay.
for some stuff I'm going to do.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. What does that look like for the rest of the year or next year?
yeah. So coming up in the next few years, I'd like to head obviously in that, more poppy direction.
Yeah.
I feel like for the last year or so, it's been kind of like a mix, like just setting like some direction of like, this is where, I relatively stand. Like if you fuck with this, then,
Yeah.
you'll fuck with the rest of my shit.
Yeah.
And so the alt pop, I'm focusing on making that the direction right now. I've got a lot of stuff put together and lined up in the back
Okay.
that I've been working on probably it's been a year now, a lot of the tracks, and I've been finding like the right people that I want to produce those tracks. And so it'll head towards alt pop, and then eventually, so I've done some hyper pop, and that's kind of where the sad boy comes in.
Okay.
Upbeat sad boy, because it is more that direction with it.
Are there any influences out there that people might recognize that have influenced you that is similar feel and genre?
Yes. As it stands, I'm very impacted by like Glaive, Dominic Fike, D4VD, a little bit of Billie Eilish.
Okay.
And then going towards like that hyper pop side, I think it's pretty like, if you know what hyper pop is, like it's very, there's just like these groups of artists that like, all right, these names,
Okay.
So like again towards Glaive, Eric Doa, Break-Ins, that kind of realm.
Is that stuff you've always sort of gravitated to, or is that recent?
Yes. So when I started production, I was doing EDM, but the EDM that I did always felt different than like classical EDM. So I was like, all right, well, where do I want to take this? And I just kept working, and there was like this pop. Well, then it went towards hip hop a little bit.
Okay.
But I didn't stay on hip hop. I just kind of took elements of the hip hop, and then I went towards pop. And then I took elements from kind of both of them and infused them in pop. And it just happened to be that's what the genre was called, was hyper pop. And took that direction with it. So it just happened that everything kind of flowed into that state.
Is Nashville the right place for that? It's known obviously for country western music and bluegrass and things like that, but do you feel at home here with what kind of music you want to make?
So over this last year, that's kind of what the alt-pop reason is for.
Okay.
Is to kind of focus on that scene locally.
Okay.
It still is me, and it's still a lot of what I live with, but it's taking what I do in hyperpop and just chilling it back a lot and focusing on like the lyrical and melodic content of it. Nice. To make something a lot more like I've been getting into folk and like that type of style, right. And then like blending it with pop.
Okay.
And it's
so a lot of people here, they sort of gig up and down Broadway and coffee shops and things like that, and it's all the covers of all your usual stuff that you'd recognize if you came to Nashville. And every now and then they're able to sprinkle in like an original. Like, are there venues that you can go and perform your stuff? Yes.
So when it comes to venues here in Nashville, it's a lot about who you know and a lot about who you can get in contact with. For Nashville, if you're trying Broadway, it's not the same as artistry. And I feel like anyone that's here kind of knows what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not... If you're heading the Broadway direction, you're typically stuck on Broadway.
Yeah,
if you're heading a little bit more of like the artistry direction, you have opportunity to go elsewhere, and so it depends on where you're trying to go with it. Okay. I don't want to get stuck on Broadway personally, so
Broadway's not your thing.
No, I don't try to zone in on Broadway.
Yeah.
I've tried to. I try to at least learn songs, so that way if I get up on a stage in front of that, I can at least have stuff in my back pocket that I can pull out a guitar and play some stuff. But that's where that lays.
Okay.
I don't really mess with Broadway.
Yeah, I get that. But there's an assumption or there's a perception that people have of Nashville that you're trying to make it as an artist. It's down at Tootsie's and all that stuff, but there is this whole other subculture, I think, around town, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that you can plug into.
Yeah, there's oddly a decent underground hip hop
that's what I've heard.
Culture
yeah,
here.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, I know a few people in that scene, and so I've got connections in that avenue. But yeah, to honestly to be something like this, like where a lot of these artists, like Ari, where all of these artists have come together from like hip hop to pop to I'm bringing in hyperpop or EDM or folk. Like it's some cool stuff's coming together, and that's what I like seeing is people that like infusing genres. I've always liked infusing genres. I've always found something unique with it and something different. So I really like that.
Okay. Well, I am fascinated and curious about a kid that grew up in Tennessee, probably a decent upbringing, lifestyle that you light up when you talk about lyrics, and you lit up earlier when you were talking about sad songs.
Yeah.
So what in the world in your life has inspired the melancholy and like that the depth of that thinking? Like what?
Growing up, I was pretty freaking sad.
Okay.
Yeah, you can laugh about it. It's yeah.
All right. Well.
Yeah, it was. I was just. I don't know. I guess I was just growing. You know, I was still a teenager. I was very emotional.
Yeah.
So a lot of what happened in my life during those times, impacted me stronger than it should have.
Yeah.
And it's not until like the last couple of years that I've really started to feel away from that direction from the rest of my life. And you know, because it impacted me so much as a child, it feels kind of reminiscent now when I feel those feelings. Or think back on them. It's oddly joyful. So when I listen to my sad stuff, even though it's like, oh man, that's depressing, for me it's like, oh man, like that touches a piece of my childhood, you know? And that for me is what's being brought out in a lot of the music I'm making for what's to come in this next year. It focuses a lot on all kids have to grow up.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the direction that I'm taking it, because it's, I mean, we all have to do it at some point. You know?
Everybody has their story. It's just, you know, that's interesting.
And it's like sad, but at the same time, like it's happy.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's weird, you know?
Okay. Well, that's life.
Yeah, exactly.
Not everybody's, hopefully not everybody's sad all the time, but not everybody's happy.
And I feel like that first, I put out an album last year, Wrong Person, Right Time, and I felt like it was very sad. And I wanted to pull away from that just a little bit, but still keep the sad elements of it, because it kind of drove me into the person that I am today. And I feel like that really characterized my artistry. And now with that mixed with like the idea of having to grow up and having to, you know, let go of that reminiscent stuff, it becomes a little more happy too. So even though it has some sad undertones, it, you know, brings it a little more upbeat, and you feel a little more happy with it because of that. You know, you feel like you're moving on from past, you know, past and childhood, and what brings you to now.
Okay. So what are you most curious about today in terms of your life and your career and everything? Is there something out there that you're dying to know more about?
I've not thought about that. I believe just I'm very, very, I guess that's a very, like, I'm very broad in it. Like, I'm very open-minded. I'm willing to hear, you know, anything, any side. So I think for this retreat, it was definitely finding those producers and getting in that aspect of artistry. So now that I've touched on that and I got to feel that, I think it's going that way and continuing down that path a little bit more, so I can focus on that.
With collaboration with different people and different genres and things
and
like that.
mostly production, like mostly with producers, so I can focus on the artistry of Elis Cole.
Okay.
When you sit down to produce as an artist, it's not the same as when you're sitting in a room and you get to come up with like a whole song and then be like, this is my vision, and then they like kind of bring it to life. Versus like sitting down and you start producing and you're like, okay, now you have to think about like, okay, I got to stop my creative process to sit down and play the guitar. It's like, okay, well, now I've got like a bump every, you know, few minutes where I have to sit down and like really think about like, and then the creative process kind of like stops for the song, which means that you don't get to keep drawing that out, which is where I started finding love in the folk and country like side of things. Because you can write a whole song and then you can take it in almost any direction.
That's right.
And I love that.
Yeah, that's right.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it sounds freeing, to be honest.
Yes.
You know, because it feels like if you introduce the production side of things, it's very technical and process oriented.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Well, that's cool. All right. Well, good luck with that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Elis Cole, E-L-I-S.
E-L-I-S, C-O-L-E.
C-O-L-E. All right. Well, good luck, Elis. Thanks for your time.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Have a great rest of your year, okay?
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
See you, man.
Hi, everyone. This is a teaser for a new song called 2003 that I wrote. I hope you enjoy. 2003, this month I'd be with demons who love, can't give up. But oh my, I need to take leave, 'cause that little boy's grown up. I've had enough, I give up. up, but you keep calling. You know it's silent, the phone is lying. I really couldn't be, but I hear you calling. You know it's silent, oh don't get me started. I can still hear you calling. That shit hurts, ow.